You know, that definition of insanity that gets thrown around at basically every single corporate retreat.
Oh, yeah. Usually printed on a slide with a picture of Einstein.
Right, even though I am pretty sure he never actually said it.
Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
That's the one. We say it, we nod along, we feel all superior, and then we go right back to our desks to do exactly that.
It is entirely the standard operating procedure. I mean, when a product launch flops, or a reorg creates complete chaos, or the quarterly numbers miss the mark, the instinct is almost never to say, hey, maybe our entire theory of how this works is just wrong.
No, the instinct is always, we just didn't execute hard enough. Everyone worked late, more rigor, more emails.
Right, exactly. It's this try harder fallacy. But today, we are unpacking a source that basically says, stop. It's not about your effort. It's about the model inside your head. We are doing a deep dive into A New Way to Think by Roger L. Martin.
And for anyone who doesn't track, management gurus like baseball stats, Roger Martin is a heavyweight. He's the former dean of the Rotman School of Management, and he's the guy that CEOs like A.G. Lafley at P&G call when the standard MBA playbook just catches fire.
What I really love about this book is that it doesn't just offer, tips. It goes right after the fundamental architecture of how we think business actually works. Martin argues that we're all operating on this received wisdom.
These dominant models.
Yes, dominant models like maximize shareholder value or strategy is distinct from execution. And he says they're just scientifically flawed.
So our mission today is a bit of a demolition job. We're going to tear down these old models, which, let's be honest, are probably making your work life absolutely miserable right now, and replace them with models that actually function in reality. And we really have to start with the biggest one, the war room.
Competition. If you walk into a boardroom and ask, who are we competing against, the CEO will almost intuitively point to another building across town.
Right. If you're at Ford, you point at GM.
If you're at Procter & Gamble, you point at Unilever.
It's the whole battle of the Titans narrative. General versus general.
But Martin says that's a complete hallucination. It's a comforting story, but it's just not real. Competition does not happen between headquarters. It doesn't happen in the boardroom. It happens on the shelf, or, the digital shelf.
Because the customer standing in CVS is not weighing the corporate culture of P&G versus the supply chain efficiency of Unilever.
Oh, of course not.
They are holding a bottle of Pantene in one hand and a bottle of Fructis in the other.
That is the only place the war actually exists, in that split second. And if you accept that, it leads to a really uncomfortable realization about the whole corporate hierarchy.
How so?
Well, if the only place you win is on the shelf, then the hierarchy exists solely to help that specific bottle of shampoo win.
Oh, this is where Martin gets absolutely ruthless. He talks about the net value of management layers.
Yes. Think about it this way. Let's say you have a beauty care division sitting above the brand team. That division costs a lot of money. Salaries, nice offices, fancy offsites. Martin asks a brutal question. Does that division add more value to the bottle of Pantene than it costs to maintain the division?
Because if it doesn't, you're basically just taxing your own product.
Exactly.
You have to charge the customer more for the shampoo just to pay for these beauty care division managers who aren't even making the shampoo better.
You are rendering yourself uncompetitive by your own design. Martin argues that most organizations are just filled with these taxing layers. They think they are managing the war, but in reality, they are just dead weight that the frontline product has to carry on its back.
So the org chart isn't a power structure at all. It's a cost structure. That is a terrifying way to look at your boss.
Or look at yourself?
Yeah, let's not go there. But speaking of bosses and what they actually care about, we have to talk about the Holy Grail. Since 1976, the dominant religion in business has been to maximize shareholder value.
Right. The idea that the sole purpose of a corporation is to enrich the owners. It's literally the bedrock of modern capitalism.
And Martin says this is a trap. But I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. Surely making money for shareholders is the result we actually want, right? Why is focusing on it a bad thing?
It's bad because of a massive fundamental disconnect. Executives cannot control the stock price.
I mean, they certainly try to.
They try, but think about what a stock price actually is. It's not a reflection of today's performance. It's the market's expectation of future performance. It's literally a bet on what's going to happen.
Oh, I see. So if I'm a CEO and my bonus is heavily tied to the stock price, I'm not really incentivized to build a better company today. I'm incentivized to raise the market's expectations for tomorrow.
Which turns the CEO into a hype man. You end up managing the narrative, spinning stories. Maybe you cut R&D to boost short-term profits just so the expectations stay high. Eventually, reality catches up and the crash is so much harder.
So what's the alternative model?
Martin points to Johnson & Johnson as the absolute antidote. They have their famous credo.
I've seen this. It's literally a numbered list of priorities carved in stone somewhere, right?
Explicitly ordered. Priority 1 is customers. Priority 2 is employees. Priority 3 is communities. And literally dead last, shareholders.
Which sounds like absolute heresy on Wall Street. Put the owners last.
And yet, look at the Tylenol crisis in the 80s. When people were poisoned by those tampered bottles, the CEO didn't ask what a recall would cost the shareholders this quarter. He didn't pull up the stock ticker.
Right. He looked at the credo.
Customers are number one. So he pulled every single bottle off every shelf in the country.
It cost him something like $100 million in 1982 money, which is wild.
An absolute fortune. But that decision saved the brand because the public trusted them. And over the long run, J&J has delivered massive returns to shareholders. That is the paradox Martin highlights.
The companies that focus on the customer first end up making the shareholders rich.
And the ones that focus on the shareholders first often end up destroying the company.
Okay, so let's pivot to that customer then. If we are putting them first, we need to understand what makes them tick. And Martin has a take here that kind of hurts my feelings as a consumer, but it feels incredibly true.
You mean the laziness factor?
Yes. The marketing world always tells us we need to build customer loyalty. We need to delight them until they fall deeply in love with our brand. But Martin says, no, they don't love you. They just want to get on with their lives.
It is a massive blow to the ego of marketers everywhere. Martin argues that brand loyalty is mostly a myth. We just give customers way too much credit for being rational, calculating decision makers.
Right, because the human brain is just an energy conservation machine.
Exactly. It doesn't actually want the best choice. It wants the easy choice.
Yeah, he uses this term, processing fluency.
Right. When a choice is habitual, it's fluent, it's easy, the brain absolutely loves that. Martin calls this cumulative advantage. If I buy Tide detergent and it cleans my clothes and the bottle is a big orange jug next time I'm in the store, my brain spots the orange blob and just sends a direct signal to my arm to grab it.
You haven't decided anything.
I haven't done any math. I haven't read the ingredients. I've just executed a habit.
This explains why people get so irrationally angry when apps change their design. Like, I remember when Instagram changed their logo from that little retro camera to the flat gradient sunset thing. People were completely furious.
And they weren't furious because the new logo was objectively ugly. They were furious because you broke their habit. You destroyed their processing fluency. Suddenly, they had to spend actual mental energy just to find the app on their phone screen.
It seems so trivial, but for the brain, that micro friction is exhausting.
Exactly. And Martin contrasts this with the old MySpace versus Facebook war. Do you remember how MySpace let you customize literally everything?
Barely, but yes. I remember profiles with pitch black backgrounds, neon green text, and like heavy metal music that just auto-played at maximum volume. It was completely chaotic.
It was highly creative, sure, but it was an absolute nightmare for processing fluency. Every single page looked totally different. You had to relearn the interface every time you clicked on a new friend's profile.
And then Facebook came along.
And Facebook said, no, everyone gets the exact same blue and white template.
Which honestly was super boring.
Boring, but perfectly fluent. It was predictable. It became a habit almost instantly because the brain didn't have to do any extra work to navigate it. Martin's takeaway here is just crucial for anyone launching anything. Don't just innovate for the sake of newness.
If you have a habit, protect it with your life.
The familiar solution usually trumps the perfect one. Every time.
Okay, so we got the customer figured out. They want easy, habitual solutions. Now we need a strategy to actually give them that. But this is where Martin really throws a wrench in the gears. He says, we are doing strategy entirely wrong because we are obsessed with data.
This is easily the most controversial part of the book for a lot of MBA types. We are basically taught from day one that data is objective truth. In God we trust, all others bring data.
But Martin goes full philosopher on this, right? He brings up Aristotle.
He does. And look, this isn't just academic fluff. It's actually vital to understand. Martin explains that Aristotle distinguished between two different parts of the world.
Okay, track with me here.
There is a part where things cannot be other than they are. Things like gravity or the boiling point of water or planetary orbits, that is the scientific world.
Right. In that world, the past perfectly predicts the future. If I dropped my coffee mug yesterday, it fell and broke. If I drop it tomorrow, it will fall and break.
Exactly. In the scientific world, data is absolute king. It is both valid and reliable. But business. Business completely belongs to the other part of the world.
The part where things can be other than they are.
Because business is fundamentally about human behavior.
And humans change. We aren't rocks.
Right. So when you apply rigid scientific data analysis to human behavior, you run into a massive trap. Data is 100% reliable. It tells you exactly what happened in the past. But in the design world of business, data has zero validity about the future.
Wait, unpack validity versus reliability for a second. That seems like a key distinction.
Okay, reliability means you get the exact same result every time you measure something. It's consistent. Validity means it's actually true for the specific thing you were trying to predict. Martin's whole point is you can have perfect, flawless data about the past, so high reliability. But if consumer habits change tomorrow, that data is entirely useless for predicting the future. It has no validity.
The Lego example in the book illustrates this so perfectly.
It really does. So for years, Lego's data was irrefutable. Girls do not play with construction toys.
They had literal decades of sales numbers to prove it.
The data was incredibly reliable.
But that's like saying people don't like to fly in airplanes in 1902.
Exactly. The data was just a historical record of the fact that Lego hadn't invented a toy that appealed to girls yet. When they finally decided to ignore their own spreadsheets and just look at the humans studying how girls actually play, which turned out to be much more narrative and role-play based, they launched Lego Friends.
And it was a massive, massive hit.
If they had stuck to the data, that product literally never would have existed.
So Martin proposes a shift in how we do this. Instead of asking what is true, which traps you in the past, you should ask what would have to be true.
Yes. This is called strategic choice structuring. I absolutely love this because it kills those endless, agonizing boardroom arguments where one person says, I think this will work, and the other person says, I think it won't.
Right. It completely stops the battle of opinions. You take a possibility, say, let's launch a premium version of our product, and instead of fighting over it, you ask, okay, we don't know if this will work, but what would have to be true for it to be a brilliant idea?
He walks through the Olay skincare story to show exactly how this works. So P&G had this dusty old brand, Oil of Olay. Internally, people basically called it Oil of Old Lady.
Wow. Brutal.
Very brutal. P&G really wanted to fix it. They had this wild idea to transform Olay into a masstige brand.
Masstige meaning mass prestige.
Right, prestige department store quality, but sold in CVS or Walgreens.
And the main sticking point was the price.
Yes. The question was, what would have to be true for a shopper to pay $18.99 for a drugstore face cream? Keep in mind, at the time, drugstore stuff was like $5.
So the condition was that the consumer has to perceive that price tag as a signal of high quality, not just a massive ripoff.
So instead of arguing, they tested it. But they didn't just ask people, hey, would you buy this? They tested the specific condition. They put the exact same cream on the shelf at 3 different prices. At $12.99, it sold okay, but people just treated it like a regular drugstore product. At $15.99, sales completely tanked.
Why? That's right in the middle.
It was in the death zone. It was way too expensive to be a bargain, but it was just too cheap to be credible as a luxury item.
But at $18.99,
sales went completely through the roof.
Which breaks basically every classical economic model of supply and demand. Higher price usually means lower sales.
Only if you look at the data from the past. But if you look at the logic of what would have to be true, it makes perfect sense. At $18.99, the shopper looked at it and thought, wow, this is really expensive for a drugstore. It must be as good as the $50 stuff at Macy's. It's actually a deal.
The price itself changed their psychology.
Exactly. You cannot find that in a spreadsheet. You have to imagine it first and then test it.
Okay, so we have a new way to think about strategy. But even the best strategy fails if the organization itself is a mess. And Martin has some very strong words about the internal functions of a company. HR, IT, R&D.
This is the internal structure problem. In most companies, functions like HR or IT fall into one of two major traps. They are either imperial or they are servile.
Imperial meaning they just build their own little kingdoms.
Right. They say, we're doing this huge new IT rollout because it's the industry standard and you all just have to deal with it. They totally disconnect from the actual business strategy and just do what makes their own department look good.
And servile is the exact opposite.
Servile is when they just take orders. Oh, marketing needs 5 new people hired by Tuesday. Okay, we'll process the paperwork. Martin says both approaches are completely useless.
So what's the fix?
Functions need their own strategy that directly supports the company's where to play and how to win choices.
The Four Seasons Hotel example really brought this home for me.
It's the gold standard. Four Seasons' core corporate strategy is luxury as service. That's how they win. So the HR department didn't just say, well, we filled jobs. They developed a specific strategy to hire for attitude over experience.
They have that brutal interview process, right? Like 4 or 5 separate rounds.
It's intensely rigorous because their HR strategy was, look, we can teach anyone how to make a bed to our standards, but we absolutely cannot teach someone how to genuinely care about a guest.
So HR wasn't a support function at all.
No, they were a strategic weapon. They were the ones directly ensuring that the luxury as service promise could actually be kept on the front lines.
That requires a huge shift in thinking. It also heavily connects to how Martin views employees in general. We still tend to treat knowledge workers, people who literally think for a living like factory workers.
The permanent job bucket. You hire someone into a static slot, 9 to 5, to do marketing. But knowledge work isn't steady like a conveyor belt. It comes in huge waves.
Right.
So you get this awful binge and purge cycle. You hire tons of people when you're incredibly busy, and then you fire them all when a big project ends.
It's demoralizing and incredibly inefficient.
Martin suggests we need to act much more like a Hollywood movie crew or consulting firm. You organize the work around projects.
He calls this flow to work.
Yes. P&G implemented this in their Global Business Services division. You don't own a permanent desk in a specific siloed department. You are part of a larger resource pool. When a massive priority comes up, like integrating the whole Gillette acquisition, you flow directly to that project.
You focus 100% on it until it's done.
And when it's done, you flow to the next major priority.
I mean, that sounds terrifying for people who like stability. Like, where do I even sit on Monday?
It is definitely scary at first. But it actually stops those massive layoff cycles because you aren't permanently tied to a specific daily task that might suddenly become obsolete. You are tied to your skills, which can be applied literally anywhere. It treats the worker as dynamic talent, not a replaceable cog.
Which brings us to the glue that holds all of this together. Culture. Every CEO in the world wants a high-performance culture. They have these big speeches, they print posters with soaring eagles on them.
And nothing changes. Nothing ever changes. Martin is adamant about this. You cannot change culture with speeches. It is physically impossible.
So what actually is culture, really, if it's not the mission statement painted on the lobby wall?
Culture is just the sum of the invisible rule books inside everyone's heads. It's the silent script that tells you how to behave if you want to stay safe and get ahead in this specific building.
Like, keep your head down, don't challenge the boss, make sure the PowerPoint looks really pretty.
Exactly. And you absolutely cannot rewrite that mental rule book with a corporate manifesto. You can only change it by changing the interpersonal interactions. You have to force a new behavior.
The story of the slide deck ban at P&G is legendary for exactly this.
It really is. So the culture at P&G used to be all about bulletproofing. You would walk into a management meeting with a 100-page slide deck. You'd read the slides aloud, everyone would politely nod, and you'd leave.
It was pure theater.
Total theater. It was actively designed to prevent hard questions, not to answer them.
So Lafley and Martin just banned decks.
Cold turkey. They walked in and said, no more decks. You must write a simple 3-page memo. And we are going to sit here in this room, read it in silence for 10 minutes, and then we are just going to talk about it.
I can only imagine the sheer panic. Like, what do I even do with my hands?
It completely terrified people, but it violently forced a change in that unwritten rule book. The rule went overnight from hide behind the data to engage in actual problem solving. That one structural change in how Tuesday meetings were run did more for the company's culture than 10 years of town halls.
It's all about those micro interventions.
Yes, if you want to change your culture, do not write a memo. Change how you run your Monday morning meeting. Change how you approve a budget. Change the interaction itself.
And this flows right into the final piece of the puzzle here. Execution. The old cliche we always hear is execution eats strategy for breakfast. We treat them as completely separate things. The brain thinks up the plan, and the hand does the work.
And Martin despises that metaphor. He says execution is strategy. It's literally just strategy happening at a different level of granularity. He calls this the choice cascade.
Help me visualize this. He uses a river analogy, right?
Okay, yeah, imagine a massive river. At the very top, the CEO decides, we are going to navigate the Amazon. not denial. That is a choice.
High-level corporate strategy.
Then the division president looks at the Amazon and chooses, we're going to take the left branch, not the right. That is also strategy. Then the boat captain chooses, I'm going to steer around this specific cluster of rocks.
And finally, the guy holding the paddle actually chooses how hard to dig his paddle into the water.
Exactly. At every single level, it is a strategic choice. If the frontline worker, the guy with the paddle, decides to stop rowing, the CEO's grand decision to be on the Amazon is completely irrelevant.
This empowers the front line in such a huge way. They aren't just blindly executing orders. They are making the final, critical strategic choices.
Four Seasons understands this perfectly. They have the golden rule. Treat guests as you would want to be treated. That isn't a script you read from. It's a strategic framework.
Yeah.
It empowers the doorman to decide, hey, this guest looks incredibly stressed. I'm going to leave my post at the desk and physically walk them to their room and help them with their bags. He is making a real-time strategic choice to support that luxury as service goal.
He doesn't have to radio a manager and beg for permission.
No, because if he had to wait for a manager, the service would be slow and completely impersonal. By empowering him to choose, the strategy actually happens in the real world.
So we have really covered a lot of ground today. We've moved from competition happening at headquarters to competition happening on the shelf, from data-driven absolute certainty to asking what would have to be true, from rigid job titles to flowing projects.
The common thread running through all of this is acknowledging that the world is incredibly complex, it's messy, and it's fundamentally human. The old models we cling to, command and control, assuming customers are purely rational, treating data as some kind of prophecy, they're all just desperately trying to force the world to be neat and tidy.
But it's not.
It's absolutely not. Martin's work is really a permission slip to stop pretending that we have all the answers hidden in a spreadsheet.
It is. It's an invitation to actually think, to use your imagination, to stop just filling out the forms and start genuinely solving the problems.
Exactly.
So here's our final provocative thought for you to carry with you today. And let's actually take this out of the boardroom entirely. Think about a major decision you are stuck on in your own personal life right now. Maybe it's a career pivot, or moving to a new city, or even a conflict in a relationship.
Oh, I like this.
You probably have a lot of data about why things are the way they are. You have all the past evidence. But instead of obsessing over what the past proves, try flipping the model. Ask yourself, what would have to be true for this new path, this crazy new option, to actually be the best choice I ever made?
What would have to be true?
Right, it might just stop you from doubling down on a broken model in your own life.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you next time.